Thursday night. That means it's time for that SEC Powers Hour. I'm Randy. That's Joe. How you doing, man? I know you were down there last week when we were sitting here. It was one of those situations where we were trying to be optimistic and lighthearted about, the things that everybody was dealing with. There was a hurricane on the way, and since then, the world has changed for so many people, including yourself. You've had some issues down your way with power and all those sorts of things. So we're glad to see you on the air tonight, man. I hope everybody down there's doing okay.
Oh yeah, we're doing good. Had a little little storm blow through middle Georgia. Not often you get to see a Category 1 hurricane come rolling through Dublin, but we actually did well. Got in the eye of the hurricane here. It passed right over us, but little siding damage. I have a privacy fence in some pieces of my yard, and other places I don't. But all in all good. Much better than our friends that are faring in other places near us and afar. So can't complain.
Yeah, well, I'm glad to hear that. And obviously, my heart just hurts. It just hurts for the people who've been impacted, especially here in the state of Georgia. And the thing about this storm in particular is what's happened in Western North Carolina. We were just there this summer, like we were in Asheville this summer. And we made that trip on purpose because we wanted to take the girls and share all of that with them, and to now understand what's happening up there. Like, it just makes my heart sad, and we were happy we got to make that trip, but man, those people that they are going to need some prolonged help up that way. So, just, hoping for the best for those people, doing what we can to help them when we can. And I just ask that if you can do anything to help those folks out, or here in the state or anywhere, if you can do anything to help these people out, do what you can. Because, every good turn is needed at this point.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But I think that I probably didn't get any closer to that silver ring or trophy this week. No. I'll be honest with you, before we even get into the conversation, I did not even watch the entire Georgia ball game, even though what I said would happen in the second half seemed to have happened correctly, that Carson came out and, did what Carson needed to do. But didn't watch the whole game. What's up, Carol, Timothy, in the chat there? But, we'll just see what the old scoreboard says here in just a minute. And I was looking at the games that got picked up for tonight, and I think you're just doing something to taunt me with the fact that you have OK State in there again.
I definitely thought about it that way. I definitely smiled when I looked across the thing, and I was like, man, I'm really going to make Joe pick OK State again. So you're right. You're referencing our weekly picks. Here's the card, the key card with all the information right there. But here's the good news. Both of us were like sideways last week, and this is going to be a rare occurrence. I know I flashed it up there pretty quick, but here are the results from last week. Yours truly went 6-5. 6-5. Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah. Arkansas didn't come through. Ole Miss didn't come through. I mean, so then we both missed the Georgia Southern game. I mean, that did turn into a bit of a track meet, and you said if it did, Southern would win, and that's kind of what happened. So, you had it right, but you picked Georgia State anyway. So we both missed that one. I went 6-5. So revel in your glory. You went 7-4. And there's your visual proof. I'm not lying.
Yes.
7-4. And I did do the math off camera so I wouldn't embarrass myself. And I tallied up the season totals here.
Uh-oh.
Do you want to hear your numbers first or my numbers?
Doesn't matter.
Okay. Joe Show coming in with a record so far through the season of 51-25. So you're doing pretty good. 2 out of 3 ain't bad. That's about where you are. 2 out of 3 ain't bad. And I'm not doing like that much better in the grand scheme of things here. My tally to this point is 59-17. So I have an 8-game lead so far. over the course of the season. Now, by the time we got to the end of the year last year, that had ballooned on you. I think you finished, I don't know, 15, 20 games back, something like that.
Yeah.
It wasn't pretty at the end.
Nah.
So, but you're right in the running. A lot can happen between now and the end of the season here. So
that's right.
This
Get him, Timothy. Tell him, buddy. Tell him.
My shelf is going to look really bare back there if I have to give up the hardware. So,
I can make room for it.
So we'll see how that goes. So let's do this, Joe. Oh, I do want to take a quick second and just remind everybody, I'm here because Bastion helps me to be here. If you like what we do, support the people that support the show, and click that link down in the bottom. Get yourself a discount on some cool Bastion gear, including the best pins that I have here in my home. So give those a chance if you're interested. I know Joe's here because of the good people at Georgia First Bank. So we just want to take a second and say thanks to those individuals for helping us put this show on for you. Remember, support the people that support the show. That's a good way to benefit and help the channel if you can possibly do it. So, Joe, I know you didn't watch all of the Georgia game last week. I did. I watched every second. And, I mean, frankly, I kind of felt that way in the first half. I'm like, this is, failure to launch is what happened there. And then, I said a whole lot about this on this week's podcast. If you want to know my in-depth thoughts, go check that out, please. That's where I get into all the things that I think about that game. But needless to say, walking off the field at the end of the game, I felt better about the way the team played than obviously I did in the first half. And I think going into last week, I said a lot about the proving ground. Georgia had a lot to prove. They needed to show this, that, and the other. And like you said, in the second half, the things that I pointed out specifically that I needed to see from this team, I saw. The question is that the team that's going to show up the rest of the year? And we're just all going to have to wait and see. I mean, that's kind of how I feel about that. We're outside of the Georgia-Alabama game, since you said you didn't get to finish it. Is there anything else that stood out to you about last week's games? Any of the ones that maybe you want to revisit real quick? I mean, we touched on Georgia State. OU Auburn was last week. That was a crazy game, Alabama or Southern Alabama, LSU got the win. Anything at all that stood out to you about last week other than Kentucky pulling off the big upset down at the Grove?
No, really, that was the only thing that caught my attention. And, I don't remember who I picked. Who did I pick? Did I pick Kentucky?
Yeah, you did. That's the reason you won the week.
That's right. Right there. See, I thought I'd pick Kentucky.
Yeah. See, I was like, I believe Kentucky's going to give them a hard go. I just felt like being at home, Ole Miss might make a play at the end or something. And the way the game, the deciding score was a fumble into the end zone, that wound up being the difference in the game. I mean, Kentucky outplayed them, and they still needed a good bounce to get the win. But they did. So Kentucky got, and I was rooting for Kentucky the whole time, even though I had picked Ole Miss. That's just the way it is when you're a football fan.
I'll just leave it there and just bask in the glow of the correct pick there. And just kind of kick myself for knowing that Georgia Southern game was going to go the way that it did, and I still picked State. So anyway, love you, Dave Cohen, but I might have to jump off that bandwagon next time. But love you, Dave.
Trying to win this thing over here, Dave.
Trying to win this thing, man. Got some silver to get after. You understand?
See, if you thought that I was giving you a hard time about Oklahoma State and who they are going to have to play this week, you are going to love what I tabbed as the game of the week. Are you ready to see it? Check this out.
I am.
Let's check this out. Missouri and Texas A&M. The reason, at the end of the day, the reason I went with this one was because this was the only ranked-on-ranked matchup. You got a top 10 Missouri team at 9, and A&M squeaks in at number 25. So it's a ranked matchup, and the others, there are some other games out there that I thought were pretty interesting. Like, of course, the Deep South's oldest rivalry is this week. Auburn's coming in to play in Athens to take on Georgia. So Georgia's going to try to get back on the right foot here, and they're going to get to do it against one of their oldest rivalries, which is a cool game. This is always a fun game. Always a fun game. Miss Beast will be paying close attention to this one. But just talking about Missouri there for a minute. I mean, this is the guy that I thought was going to get all of the buzz this year around Missouri. But given the way they've struggled, he has not been able to really get going, him or Brady Cook. In fact, he doesn't even lead Missouri currently in receiving yards. This is Luther Burden III. He, in some people's eyes, is the best wide receiver, not only in the conference, but in consideration coming into the year in the country. And yet he has somewhere around 250 yards this year. Yeah. So talk about a failure to launch. This has been a situation where Brady Cook and Luther hadn't gotten it done. Larry Weiss is the leading receiver on that team. That's the guy on the other side from Burden. So this, although I pegged it as our most interesting game this week, it's kind of puzzling, right? I mean, because Missouri seems to just have not found their stride. They almost lost to Vanderbilt at home, and that was as much Vandy putting up a good fight as it was Missouri struggling. And there's still people out there who are beating the Missouri drum thinking they're going to hang around to the end because of their schedule. Like, it's inside the SEC. It is probably the easiest path to Atlanta. So if they can just keep finding a way to win, then, they're going to be there down into the season. But they do have to go on the road, and A&M, that's a tough place to go play. They're going to be fired up, new head coach, all that. I don't know. Initial thoughts here on Missouri and Texas A&M.
Oh, well, I mean, I'm sure I don't even have to say it. You could probably just read my mind and know that Missouri just makes me mad, and I'm a Texas A&M guy. So,
right.
I
Is that
fully
a lean?
expect.
Are we leaning there? Are we already leaning?
Oh, there's no lean. I mean, I am on the wagon, at Texas A&M or whatever they pull around. Is it a wagon?
No,
that's OU. That's OU.
Right, exactly.
They have the military there. I'm on the military side.
Okay.
Yeah, the show me state's got to show me a lot more.
Okay, well, we'll see. This one is just a bit of a weird game because I actually expected more from A&M than I've seen so far as well. I think maybe A&M was the team that I picked as my overachiever this year, and they're ranked, but they also haven't set the world on fire the way maybe I thought they would. So,
give them a minute.
So that's
They're coming around.
That's where we are on that one. I don't know, Joe. We're not halfway through the season yet. This is week 6, so it's week 6, but we're not. Most teams have only played 4 games, so we're not halfway through the schedule. I don't know. So far over the course of the season, are you seeing anything? You seeing any patterns, anything like that, or just a team that's standing out to you, or a player over the first part of the season here that's really got your attention?
Not really. Not me personally. Of course, I don't spend a lot of time getting to watch, the games in depth or anything like that. But just in the old water cooler conversation, which is the way I would kind of stay up to speed, nothing's really jumping out at me other than the just ridiculousness that is Florida State and Florida. And, Miami is doing Miami's thing. So the Florida teams have been surprising to me. Other than that, Kentucky's ability to play better. That's, those are kind of the water cooler talking points that we've been discussing. Georgia's inability to hang on or get the win against, Georgia there against Alabama. But nothing else is really surprising me. Nothing's jumping off the page at me. There hasn't been anything that I've just been like, wow. It's just kind of, I think the adjustment and the mediocre play might have something to do with some of the realignment. I think it might have to do with seeing the NIL factor into college football a little bit more, but nothing's really surprising me so far. Nothing's been stealing the conversation.
Well, the way I titled this show tonight was "This is why you can't ignore SEC football." And what I mean by that is you're coming off a week where like millions, 12, 14 million people, I forget the number, at its peak moment, all eyes were tuned in to Georgia, Alabama, interconference battle, right? Inside the conference, 2 of the best teams in the nation, blow for blow, right? So everybody was looking last week, but then you come up this week and you're like, how do you possibly follow that up if you're the conference? And when I was looking around at the list of games that we were going to pick this week and who was playing who, like I said, I actually had to stop and give some real thought to which game I was going to choose, because there's more than one game on the docket this week that could get game of the week attention. Like Georgia Auburn. I understand that Auburn's record doesn't reflect that they're that great, but they have that prime, what we know in SEC country is the prime territory of the 3:30 start. And that's for good reason, because it's the Deep South's oldest rivalry. You never know exactly what's going to happen. You always get some crazy stuff going on. That could be the game of the week just because of that, right? And then I looked across the schedule. There's the A&M Missouri game. That one's interesting. But the most interesting game of the week, Joe, could be Ole Miss, having lost at home, now has to go on the road
to South Carolina.
South Carolina. And South Carolina has overachieved in some people's eyes so far. Now they're without their starting quarterback. So how are they going to adjust and be able to score with Ole Miss, who's going to come out there and try to do some stuff and, right their ship again? I mean, there are some really interesting games across the conference. Tennessee and Arkansas is this week. And you're like, Tennessee's going to blow them out. Well, maybe. They very well could blow them out. They could put 40 on them, no doubt about it. But I've seen enough from that Arkansas team to know that they could be dangerous. And they're at home. And if the ball bounces the right way, you could find yourself in a game in the second half if you're Tennessee. And then you're like, how are we going to get out of here, in a game that you thought was going to be a walkover. And now you're fighting for your life there in the fourth quarter. Now, it may not go that way. Tennessee might roll in there and put it on them, because I've spoken very highly of Tennessee's defense and what I think they can do. Obviously, we know Nico, if you give him time, he can be a more than efficient quarterback. He can be very good. So does Arkansas have the defensive players to line up and play that defense? I don't know, but I am very interested in that game. That's the point, right? Yes, you don't have this marquee game that's going to blow everybody's socks off this week, but that, in my mind, is 4 games that I absolutely want to watch on Saturday.
Yeah, so, and just to help me out here, where is College Game Day going this week?
Oh, I don't know.
It is some obscure, like, West Coast somewhere.
Was it? I don't know. Are they going to Oregon? I'd have to look it up.
No, they're not going to Oregon.
Are you looking it up right now?
I am.
Okay, well, I'm not gonna. Yeah, you caught me off guard. I hadn't even looked. I haven't heard. I haven't watched any sports centers. I haven't done any of that this week. So
they're going to Cal for the first time in school history. They're going
Miami,
to Cal.
Miami's going out there.
Yeah, that's why they're going.
Yep. Okay. Well, there you go. They're going to Cal out of Berkeley. I mean, and look, as well as I do, you've been in TV enough to know. A, you can't be in the same place all the time. B, you're looking to do new things, and they're looking to, make it a coast to coast. There's a lot of TV happening here.
But
more
still,
TV
just
than
go back to what you. Oh, definitely more TV than football. But that's kind of the point that I'm making. I'm like, really, you're going to Cal?
Yeah.
Like, I don't even care that you're going to Cal. Not that I watch Game Day anyway,
right.
But you're going to Cal? Boo.
Well, Cal, I will say this. They're better than I thought they were going to be this year, whatever that's worth.
Are they?
Yeah, they are. They've got a quarterback that's pretty good. I mean, they're better than what I thought they were going to be. Now, Miami almost got beat by Virginia Tech, that almost happened, and they escaped and got out of that game. So they're still unbeaten. And I think now that you say that, that brings something to mind. I saw one of those little tracking devices. Maybe Herb Street had shared it, where the equipment van, the trucks that were traveling across country to take the equipment out there for Miami, as of yesterday, had already traveled 1,200 miles, and they weren't even halfway there. You know what I mean? Like, they are having to drive from the tip of the most southeastern state in the nation, all the way out to, Cal Berkeley, north of San Francisco, I believe. I mean, that is a haul, buddy. I mean, that is a long way. So, Who knows? Can Miami fly and make that trip and then recenter and not be jet lagged and show up and play good? Are they in trouble? I mean, I don't know. Maybe we should have picked that game. I didn't put it on the list, but
well, since we didn't put it on the list, let me tell you, because of all of my Cal's going to beat Miami.
Yeah, let me have a free one right here. Joe's going to pick the Bears. Just go with the Bears.
I'm going with the Bears.
Hell no, the upset.
Yeah, that's what's going to happen.
There you go. I'm fine with it. I would actually, it would tickle me if that happened. I mean, just because I spend a lot of my time on my channel and podcast talking about all the intangibles and stuff that go along with football more than just the X's and O's. Like, you don't come to my channel if you want X's and O's breakdowns. That's not what I do, right? I look at all of the stuff. And this would be like on a silver platter. It doesn't matter that you're undefeated or that you're the more talented team or any of that. You got to do all the things. You got to keep your head right. You got to travel your defense. You know what I mean? Like, if they cross the country like an NFL team, fail to show up and then lose, man, that would just speak to all the traps, the pitfalls of a college football season in my mind. That would be something that would actually be pretty funny to see.
There's no way those boys from Miami are going to Cal and going to get off that plane and go, we're here to play football. Ain't going to happen.
Really? You are saying that with like your whole chest right there.
I am steadfast, 100% hammer it. It ain't going to happen.
I don't even. When we scroll through the things here, maybe we'll just give an eyeball and just see, because I don't know anything about it, like the spread or the over-under, none of that. So if it scrolls up on the screen, we'll look at it here.
You saw that text message I sent you last night where it was a speed sign and it had a math equation in it.
Yeah,
that's what Miami's going into today, Saturday. It's just oh shit.
Yeah. Oh shit. Well, you should have told me you were going to do that, Joe. I could have hit you.
Yeah.
That's all right. That's okay. Alice showed that to Riley, and they solved the problem. Did you ever solve the problem?
No. I didn't even try. But as soon as you said Alice, I knew exactly what you're doing. I was like, yeah, somebody solved the problem. And see, my point was just like, if I see that going down the road, I'm just like, get your bleep button ready, because I'm just like, oh, it's not going to happen. Yeah. I'm going to jail.
That's pretty good. I did get a hearty laugh out of that, though. I appreciate
I'd let the cop chase me down and be like, well, what are you doing? I'm doing long division. I'm showing my work.
Snort.
Yeah,
that's good stuff.
I'm working it out, officer. Stay with me here.
Stick with me. You got a pencil? I broke my lead.
Yeah. Oh, people that are watching or listening to the show have no idea.
That's okay. That's okay. Sometimes it's what is it? It's point of privilege. That's what it is. Point of privilege. There you go. All right, let's do this, man. Let's jump into some of these games. We were lingering a little bit because we we got some time. There aren't that many games.
Whatever we wanted to.
Yeah. Well, that too. Of course I wanted. Of course. All right. So here we go. Let's start with. We're not gonna pick the game of the week. We'll pick that one last. We'll pick that one. So let's go with Auburn and Georgia. Georgia, more than a 3-touchdown favorite, man. And they've been that most of the year. Like before the season, they were already installed at like a 24-point favorite. And even then, I'm like, yeah, no, Georgia's not going to cover that. That's not going to happen. You bet Auburn. If you're a betting person, you take those points and get your money. I think Georgia's going to win the game. That's my pick. There you go. Georgia's going to win the game. I'm taking Georgia. But even back in the summer, I was like, don't bet Georgia to cover this line. Now, after we've seen some of these games, I honestly think you are either going to be in the very, very, very hopeful camp that what we saw in the second half last week and the fact that they want to get right, Georgia's going to come out and just lambaste Auburn and put it on them, and you bet Georgia to cover. Or you're going to be in the other boat where you're like, we're going to continue to suck in the first half. We can't score, and there's no way they're going to cover it, so you're definitely going to take Auburn. So I'm not a betting man like that. But back in the summer, I was like, you should bet Auburn. That was my take back then. But I'm taking Georgia. I'm on Georgia. No, yeah.
Well, I'm going to give Georgia the win. I'm going to say they get the win. But yeah, I don't think they're going to cover. I don't. And I'm 80% sure Georgia gets the win. I'm not 100% sold Georgia gets the win, but I'm going to take Georgia.
That's why this is a weird game. It always is. And I know there are people out there who are Xbox players who are like, whatever, Auburn's awful, Georgia's going to win. Georgia should win. But just to dismiss it and say that history doesn't matter and all that kind of stuff, this game's a hard-fought game. Always is. Auburn. When you look back over the history of Georgia,
I'm going to tell you this before you get into making solid, fact-based historical points. let me just tell you that you better tackle somebody, Georgia. Is what you better be able to do. I'm so the reason why I got frustrated. Now here's my soapbox. The reason why I didn't watch the entire game was because I sit on this channel and I was like, Georgia is going to tackle. Their corners are fierce. Coming up, we're setting edges. What did not happen the entire first portion of the game that I was watching? None of those things
did not happen.
Did not tackle. Corners were not fierce. We did not set an edge.
Yep.
And I was like, I cannot watch this. I can't. So I had to turn it. But anyway,
you have to be like a sicko like me, and just I was like, I'm always in for a penny, in for a pound. I'm in the whole time. And I actually was going to do a video about this or a TikTok or something. And I was going to share with the people, like these people, especially on YouTube, they want to do watch alongs and stuff. And if that's your deal, more power to you, man. Do it. Sign up for their Patreon, do whatever, go do that. You don't there's nothing to watch with me when the game's on. Like when Georgia was losing 30-7, I was just sitting there watching the game. I'm not somebody who screams and yells and fusses at the coaches. That's not how it goes. Like I'm just watching the game, like very, very calm. Then second half comes, Georgia starts to do things better. And I'm like, I look at Alice. I'm like, well, that's different. They figured something out, and I'm like, oh, Alice, look what they did here. This is different. We changed this. And then I'm like, Alice, there's momentum. Football's a momentum game. Still, this is how we're talking. Still not screaming, yelling, cheering, none of that stuff. And then the one time I got loud was when they hit the touchdown to go ahead. And I think I just shouted, Alice is sitting on the couch with me. I think I just shouted, Carson Beck. And I think I shouted it like 2 or 3 times, like Carson Beck, and I was just impressed in that moment with what he was able to do, because it's like I said on the show last night, the NFL scouts watched that game and they're like, yeah, that first half was bad. It was bad. They were like, but the thing you can't do as a quarterback is let things snowball on you. And the thing he showed in that game was his ability to stop the bleeding, get his head straight, and then do the positive things, right? Go out and do what he knew how to do. And he deserves crazy credit for that, as an individual. Because think about how hard that is. You're doubting your own performance. Everybody else is doubting your performance. You're on the road. You know what I mean? Like everything that could go wrong did go wrong. And yet they were still able to turn it around and put forward a good effort, So again, that was it. And then, of course, the rest of the game happened. And I just looked at Alice again, and I'm like, just got to make a tackle. I mean, that was the end of it.
Tackle.
And then they teased us, and came back and got down in the end zone and had a shot at the end there, So I don't know. Just watching me on a watch along is not very exciting. Is the point? That's what I'm trying to say. Because I'm just like, I'm not that kind of fan, man.
It is kind of funny because I am the animated one. I'm like, I'm in the living room and, the kids come up. They're like, did you call me? And I'm like, no, your dad's watching football.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm turning this off.
Yeah. You got to do that sometimes just for your own peace of mind.
Anyway,
but that's fine.
Timothy in the chat, like, I'm having a panic attack over there. Like, yeah.
Yeah. Hey, man, it was crazy. But that's just it. I'm like, oh, you see things start to happen. You're like, oh, you can feel it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, come on, I'm in here. You're my boys. Let's go. So, anyways, I'm just not great viewing, I guess is what I'm saying. But in this game, I'm on Georgia, and obviously, they've played this game. This will be the 129th meeting between these two teams. And I've been in the stadium and had my heart broken by Auburn multiple times. And I have loved it when Georgia has risen up, and rubbed some salt in the wounds of Auburn. So I always look forward to this game. Whatever I was going to say there when you had your thing to say, I don't remember. So maybe it'll come back to me.
Yeah.
Maybe it'll come back to me. I don't know. That's fine. But yeah, it's just, I love this game. Like, I really do. This is just a fun game. So give me Georgia. You got Georgia too?
Yeah, I'm going to take Georgia.
All right. So let's get to this other one here.
Georgia.
Ole Miss and South Carolina. And I already sort of teased this a little bit. I mean, Jackson Dart, honestly, Joe, Kentucky was who I said they were. They lined up and punched Ole Miss in the face defensively. And Ole Miss and their NIL built team that was supposed to be so much better along the lines of scrimmage, that's not what they put on tape last week. Like, Kentucky whipped them on both lines of scrimmage the entire game, essentially. Trey Harris made a fantastic play for Jackson Dart. That's how that game got to be close at the end there. But even then, Kentucky just took the ball right down the field and answered and just manned up on Ole Miss all day, and they got the win. I don't know that South Carolina has the horses to do that, like, especially on the offensive line, but and I don't know what they're going to do without Sellers, right, at quarterback. Like, I don't know that they can score with Ole Miss, because Ole Miss can score. They can throw it around. So I don't know. What do you think about Columbia? Do you think the environment is going to make the difference here? Do you think Ole Miss gets right? I mean, I'm not sure who I'm picking right now. Well, I'm not sure.
As much as I would like to say that the environment in South Carolina is going to be right, and that, they're going to be all in, I just don't see Carolina as being that environment where it's going to be, daytime game.
It's crazy over there, man.
I mean if it's at nighttime, it's a little different, but in the daytime, I don't see it. I mean, they'll be ready to go watch Hootie or whoever's playing, after the game or at the game or whatever. So I just don't think that South Carolina is going to be able to have the environment ready and right, but I absolutely do think South Carolina will win the ball game. I do.
Really?
Yeah. And the reason why I do is I think that Ole Miss is just going to come out there, and I think when you have an NIL team put together like that, and that's all there is to it, there's too much individuality in that, and I think that is the only thing that's going to separate Carolina and Ole Miss. I think Carolina will play better as a unit in this game and get the win. There'll be some funny action, maybe a turnover or some special teams shenanigans.
Uh-oh. Joe froze up on us right there. Some special team shenanigans is what he was going to say. So when Joe comes back, we'll get him back on here. But I honestly don't know who I'm going to take here, because part of me thinks that because they don't have their starting quarterback, you just can't trust Robbie Ashford to throw the football over the course of 4 quarters and get it right. So I think that if South Carolina is going to be successful, they have to game plan to what he does best, which is run the football and then maybe take a shot every now and again down the field. I think that South Carolina can do that. You're going to see quarterback sweep. You're going to see quarterback power. You're going to see a lot of the read game. And to Joe's point that he was talking about right there about the mercenary kind of team that Ole Miss has built up, the thing about that unit is even against Kentucky, you could see early on that they were out there, they were giving them that like arguing between amongst themselves kind of feel. So I think Joe's onto something right there. I think that when the going gets tough, that Ole Miss team has to figure out who they are really. And then that's when we're going to know whether or not South Carolina can take advantage of the opportunities that I think Ole Miss will give them in the game. I think the pass rush is going to get after Jackson Dart from Ole Miss. That's the one thing that I'm not too worried about in terms of South Carolina. I think that they're going to be able to rush the passer. I think that they are absolutely going to be physical in the run game on offense. And unlike Joe, I think that atmosphere at South Carolina is going to make the difference. Now, Joe picked South Carolina. Am I brave enough to step up and pick South Carolina to win this game right here? Because a little birdie told me that this game, more than any other on the schedule this year, is one that South Carolina had their eyes on, that they really wanted to pay attention to, that meant something to them, that they really wanted to get. Now, I didn't get the full story about why that is, like why it is that they were going to be able to want this game so badly. But it's one of those deals where South Carolina has athletes on defense. They have athletes on offense. The thing is, they just don't have that trigger guy. But if they can get the offense to do what they do best, which is run the ball, they can be dangerous. I've almost talked myself into taking South Carolina in this game. I think South Carolina is going to make it a game. I think they're going to fight for 4 quarters with Ole Miss here. I think Ole Miss is going to be challenged. But at the end of the day, and to help us get some separation here, I'm going to take Ole Miss in this game just because Trey Harris out wide for Ole Miss is something very special. That kid's a baller. He's a great player. Jackson Dart, if they can protect him, is going to have an opportunity to make some plays down the field against South Carolina. And all in all, I believe that's the way it's going to go. So I'm going to take Ole Miss. I think South Carolina is going to be in the game for most of the game. And at the end of the day, I'm going to go with Ole Miss. So Joe is on South Carolina, and I am on Ole Miss for this game. I don't want to pick the games without Joe here with me, but we could talk about them a little bit. And then when Joe comes back in, because like I said, they've had some issues down there due to the storms with power and stuff like that. So hopefully everything's all right with Joe and he's getting his stuff straightened out down there, and he'll be back with us here in a minute. But we can look at Alabama and Vanderbilt. Now, obviously, on the face, you're going to say, well, this game is not one we should spend a lot of time on. I mean, Alabama just beat Georgia. They are now on the road taking on a scrappy Vanderbilt team, but they should have the better roster and outclass Vanderbilt. This should not be a game that Alabama has to worry about. So I am going to pick Alabama to win this game. I can tell you that right now. We're not going to build it up as something that it's not. But when you think about what you saw from that Alabama team last week, is there any part of you that opens the door to this being a sluggish performance in Nashville against Vanderbilt? The fact that the game doesn't kick off until 4:15, I think that really sort of takes a bit of that away. Like if it were a 12 o'clock kick, I think that might lend itself to everybody being a little bit more sleepy. Maybe you're not quite as sharp, something like that. But this is one of those games where people point to it as it could be a classic trap game, right? Alabama isn't exactly focused. It's a little bit sleepy because, again, if it were at noon, you get that sleepy effect. And Alabama can create their own atmosphere because odds are their fans are going to travel well, show up, and you're going to have as many Alabama fans, if not more, than Vanderbilt fans in attendance at the game. So if you're Alabama, you just aren't going to let yourself believe that this is a spot where you could come out flat, play sloppily, leave Vanderbilt in the game, and put yourself in danger. If you're Alabama, you're thinking, no, Elite doesn't get bored. We're going to roll out here. We're going to hammer Vanderbilt, and we have the better athletes, and that's all there is to it. And that is very likely what is going to happen. Now, there's nobody that I could get on this show that's going to come in here and argue for Vanderbilt. But what I will say is that I do have respect for what Vanderbilt's doing this year. I love their quarterback. That kid's a gamer. And I really, really like the fact that Clark Lee is now in charge of that Vanderbilt defense. He's not worried about the offense anymore. He's got somebody else doing that. He's focused solely on the defense, and he puts a good game plan together. But at the end of the day, I believe that they just don't have the horses to run with Alabama. And if Alabama shows up, and even if they show up and play bad, they should still be good enough to beat Vanderbilt right here. So without, if Joe's not here, I can make my pick official. I'm going to go ahead and take Alabama. I'm pretty confident Joe would take Alabama in this game too. Obviously, they're a big favorite. But I don't know. I think Alabama fans, if you happen to see this, I think this is a gauge of your team. I know as a Georgia fan, when my team went up to Vanderbilt last year, we were traveling back. We were on vacation. We were driving, so I was listening to the game on Sirius XM radio, and I just had a fear the whole time that Georgia was going to be flat, that they weren't going to be, as sharp as I wanted them to be. And sure enough, they weren't as sharp as I wanted them to be. They got behind early. They gave up a big play to London Humphreys, who is now a Georgia Bulldog. And then, of course, Brock Bowers gets hurt, and that just makes the offense get out of rhythm, and the game was close, and Georgia had to get out of there with a hard-fought win, and they paid a heavy price to do it. Whereas 2 years ago, when Georgia rolled into Vanderbilt, they scored 28, 35 points, whatever it was, in the first quarter against Vanderbilt because that team was focused, sharp, elite, and they went right out there and took care of business and got the players out and nobody got hurt. You know what I mean? So is Alabama going to show up and be focused and razor sharp like they were against Georgia to start the game? Is Milroe and Alabama and Williams and all those cats going to roll out there and put up 28 points in the first quarter? Maybe. They certainly can. But that'll tell you a lot about who this team is. Just because they go out and struggle doesn't mean that they're not going to have a great season. It just means that for whatever reason, mentally or whatever else you want to point to, they struggled like humans do after being on such a huge high emotionally against Georgia to then have to go on the road and get up for a game like Vanderbilt. You have to have your mind right. So I think Alabama fans, there is something here for you to learn about your team in this game. But at the end of the day, I don't think there's any question here that everybody should expect Alabama to win. If it's close late in the game, then maybe think about this discussion. Think about how did we get here, right? Is Vanderbilt playing that well, or is Alabama not as sharp? And who could blame them if they're not as sharp? That's just one of those things. It's human nature. It's hard to get up week after week like that. So there's my thoughts on Alabama and Vanderbilt. Now, this one, I really do wish Joe was in here with me so we could talk about it, because I really am looking forward to Tennessee and Arkansas. Tennessee is right there in the top 5. They have dreams of doing very, very big things this year, and they should. They've looked really good so far. The offense obviously is explosive, and that defense, though, is the thing that makes them really dangerous in terms of what I think they can do over the course of the entire season. They have to travel to take on Arkansas, and Sam Pittman and his Razorbacks could very, very easily be 5-0 right now. They had Oklahoma State beaten and just gave it away. And then last week, against Texas A&M, they had every opportunity to win that game and just couldn't pull through. But they were right there in it. So if you're Arkansas, you're feeling a little bit, you're like, yeah, we gave those away, man. We could be in a completely different place right now. But now you've got a shot against a top 5 Tennessee team rolling in there. Now, we saw Tennessee go on the road to Oklahoma against a very good defense and get the job done. Now, granted, Oklahoma helped them out a lot, turning the ball over and all that sort of stuff. But we did see that Tennessee, if you get after them, they can make just mistakes just like anybody else on that offensive side of the football. The defense never was really tested against Oklahoma. Oklahoma just didn't have the capability to test them in that game. So Tennessee got the win. And if Tennessee gets the win this time, it's going to be because that defense travels with them and plays well. But I do think that this is a little bit of a dangerous spot for Tennessee because just look at the spread there. They're a 2-touchdown favorite. If you hear people talk about Tennessee, you might think about what people say about Arkansas and wonder, how is it only a 2-touchdown spread? It's just, I think that speaks to what this game could be. Like, it could be a second half game where Arkansas finds themselves very much in it in the third quarter. And that's because of the playmaking ability that they have at the quarterback position and enough playmakers on defense that they can do some things against Nico and that Tennessee offense. So I cannot walk right out there because, again, Joe and I are competing here. We're trying to win this thing. I have to take Tennessee in this spot because I really do believe in their defense. So if I'm making an official pick here, it's going to be Tennessee. But I am going to be watching this game extremely close. Like, this might be what I'm watching next Saturday night as my primary watch. I just think that Arkansas has the right sort of stuff to throw a few curveballs at Tennessee and just kind of hang around, just kind of stick around there in the second half. And this thing might end up being closer than most people think it's going to be. So that's Tennessee and Arkansas. Now, UCF and Florida, y'all know that I do not care for the Florida Gators at all. And anytime Florida loses, that makes me happy. We are already to the point where the swamp is no longer a thing that anyone fears when you travel in to play the University of Florida. And if you look at the line here, they don't expect a lot of defense to be played, with the over and under being 61.5. And UCF is actually the favorite in this game. You don't have to tell me anything else. Give me the Golden Knights against the Florida Gators right here. I think UCF goes into Florida and comes out with a win against the Gators. I know they fought hard last week. I know that they're not going to be intimidated going into play against the Florida Gators down in Gainesville. Give me UCF against the Florida Gators. Now, we're going to keep this thing moving right along here. These are not the only games we have to pick from tonight. We also have some games outside the SEC that I wanted to take a look at. And this one's a little different. I hate that I'm having to do this without Joe being here, because this was one that I put on here because I enjoy West Virginia just that much. I love picking their games. I like paying attention to what they do. Historically, West Virginia is a very good program. So whenever I have an opportunity to put them on the board, I enjoy that. Joe doesn't enjoy Oklahoma State at all. And frankly, I haven't cared about Oklahoma State since Barry Sanders left. So in this game, going on the road, Oklahoma State is 0-2 in the Big 12. And the reason they're 0-2 is because they're having issues with turnovers and things like that. They just beat themselves, and that run game just has not gotten going the way that everybody kind of thought it would. This is purely a favoritism pick here just because I like West Virginia. I really think Oklahoma State has an opportunity to get right here, but because I enjoy West Virginia so much, that's the reason I put them on the pick'em tonight. I'm going to take West Virginia to beat Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State's a 3-point favorite. They're at home. You get 3 points for being at home. So I'm just going to go ahead and take West Virginia here to win the thing outright. And if Joe were here, I'm pretty sure he would probably take West Virginia too, just so he could say he picked against Oklahoma State. That's all fine and good, but I'm not going to make an assumption. What we'll probably do if Joe doesn't get to come back on here is I will ask him to text me his picks and I'll put them on the community page. And that way everybody can see who Joe picked in these games and get his picks on record before they actually play. So give me West Virginia against Oklahoma State here. Now, we have another game that I wish Joe had been on here with us, because this was one that I wanted us to be able to pick. Not this one necessarily. It's the next one that's coming up. But this is one that we can't not pick. Originally, this was the game that everybody pointed to in the ACC as the game that was going to determine who was going to be the champion of the league. You have Clemson, you have Florida State. Florida State is an absolute mess. We all know that. We've all pointed and laughed at them. I don't cry for Florida State here. Clemson has righted the ship. Everything right now points to Clemson going into Doak Campbell and dog walking Florida State, like really putting it on them. You can see that Clemson's a 2-touchdown favorite here. They see it as low scoring. That may be what it is. I don't care. I'm not, we don't pick them over here. We pick money line, as they say, just straight up. So give me Clemson to go in and beat Florida State in a game that was supposed to be a big deal, and as it turns out, isn't going to be very much of a deal at all. If this is any kind of a game, then I have to assume Cade Klubnik got hurt for Clemson. There's all sorts of things going wrong. But I don't think it's going to be a competitive game, really. I believe that Clemson's going to go in there and handle this thing pretty easily. And I don't think I need to say much more about that one. All right, so we can wrap it up right here. We're taking it right up to the end. And this is the one I was pointing to, because just like if I ask us to pick a Notre Dame game or an Alabama game, Joe is going to pick against Notre Dame. He's going to pick against Alabama because that's what he does. Just put it in the books. We love these teams that are involved in this game. Marshall, they're up in West Virginia, beautiful country up there. And I have watched Marshall football for years now, going all the way back to when Randy Moss was there. App State is right there in Western North Carolina. So again, this is a game that, as far as I know, is still going to be played, even though the people up there are hurting in a very, very bad way. But that's because they're on the road. They're traveling to go play at Marshall. They don't have to play in Boone, where all that devastation has occurred thanks to Hurricane Helene. So for the sake of just hoping that somebody's day can be a little bit brighter because of the performance of these young men, I am going to take App State in this game to go on the road, get the win at Marshall, a big conference game inside the Sun Belt Conference. I'm rooting for App State. I'm rooting for Boone, North Carolina. I'm rooting for Western North Carolina and any and everyone that's been impacted by Hurricane Helene and the aftermath and all the damage that she wrought across this area. So I am rooting for App State. Give me App State to get the win on the road this week as they go to take on Marshall. So it's unfortunate that we lost Joe here. That is not how I saw this broadcast going, but that's okay. We got through it and we made all our picks. And at the end of the day, Joe's going to make his way back here with us. We can recap it. Like I said, I'll have him send me his picks. I'll post them on the YouTube community page just so everybody can follow along if you find any of this interesting. Regardless of whether or not you do that, take that step. We'll recap all this next week when we get together. And I want everybody out there to enjoy the games. Make sure that you're taking care of yourselves and your friends and your family. You know, the things I always ask you to do. Make sure that you pick up the phone, you call and check on your friends and neighbors, because when things like this are going on in the world, it's nice to get a nice phone call from somebody that might make you smile, might brighten your day a little bit. So if you have an opportunity to do that, please take advantage of that opportunity. Do that. Reach out to somebody who might love to hear your voice, because, we can always use a friendly voice. That's for sure. Don't you like it when you can look at the phone, see who's calling, and you just smile before you even answer? If you can do that for somebody this week, do that. Take that extra time, take a moment, give them a call, check on them, let them know you're thinking about them, because that is always a good plan for those that are important to us in this life. So until next time, you guys take care of yourselves, take care of your friends, your family, take care of each other. Joel will be back with us next week. Go Dogs!
Bring it back, bring it back, bring it back, bring it back.